Cloud. Good evening and welcome to the regular Monday night meeting of the West Shore Photography Club. Tonight is October the 4th, 2021. We have a rather full agenda tonight. I am going to mute everybody. And then as you want to, you can come back on. Okay, and Lori, you're gonna need to unmute yourself. Okay. And then you'll be able to talk. Okay. So we have a couple of trips we took last week, and one of them was to the fountains on a Wednesday evening. And Eve, you were there. You were the organizer of that trip. So can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I think we finally had a Wednesday that we had no rain. The first in 4 weeks, I think. I think if I'm not mistaken, we had what, about 15 people, Joe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Everybody, I think, really got some good images. It was, as you said, it was safe. It was gorgeous out. The fountain itself, they have the different color lights, so it switches, which was just phenomenal. I think we had a very good trip. I think we would do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't too hard either. Technically, it wasn't too hard, was it?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we also had a swap meet on Saturday, and Mike, you were there at the swap meet. You want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, most of the swapping was in swapping stories rather than swapping equipment. But it, as I said earlier, gives you an idea of what your old equipment is worth. And that's not a whole lot, but there were, I think, 6 tables set up, and I don't know how many people were there, but we had people there the whole time during the whole hour coming in and out. So in that respect, it was a success. I heard a couple people say they were really there to see actual real people from the club. So in that respect, it was good, more social than shopping, but that's fine too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of talking. So upcoming trips that we have one on this Wednesday evening to Adams Ritchie, and Mike is leading that. So Mike, we want to give everybody a little bit of an idea of what that's going to involve.
Yeah, the park itself is actually fairly large. As far as what you can photograph there, there's a full size, an actual Pennsylvania Railroad caboose that sits on tracks. There's a butterfly garden. There's a sculpture. I know we talk about photographing other people's art, but it's pretty moving. The story behind it is that, maybe 10 years ago, maybe more now that I think about it, we had a year at East Pennsboro that there were, I think, 6 or 7 students that passed away in the same year. 2 of them passed away right in school. So it was a rough year. People wanted to do something to commemorate those kids. And there's a sculpture of kids playing Ring Around the Rosie. And there's a gap in the circle to represent where those other kids would be. And like I said, it's really moving. So you might want to get down there and take a look at that. Photograph it if the feeling moves you. There's, I was hoping for more fall colors, but that really isn't happening. So there's a bocce courts. There's also a nature trail that goes down. It's a little bit of a rough go, but it goes down the hill to the Connedaguinnet Creek, and many times there's egrets down there and all that kind of thing. So there should be plenty to do. Going throughout the park, there's a paved path, so it's really easy walking. There's some benches with some views that you may want to photograph. So hopefully there'll be plenty of things there for you. Oh, I know one other thing. I'm having a guy from the Historical Society come. There's a little building there that's built to represent a nail mill that was in West Fairview in the late 1800s. And they actually have a nail pulling machine in it. So he said he'll take the plexiglass from around there and you can photograph the gears and all that kind of thing if you wish. So there should be things there to do. And if you don't have to come at 4 o'clock, I'll be there at 4 o'clock and I'll be in the little gazebo thing right in the middle. I'll have maps of the park and so on. If you come later, who knows about the sunset, but it might be a good one because the park is pretty much wide open and you should get sunset shots. So hopefully there'll be plenty to do there.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. That's at 4 o'clock. And I think that on the email went out, there was a location as to where we're going to meet and directions and stuff like that. So, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, this is a last minute addition. We're going to have at 10 o'clock, we're going to meet at the Lebanon Valley Suzanne Arnold Art Gallery, and we're going to review the Hudson River School of Photography. And Suzanne Arnold is the director, and she's going to give us an overview of it and who is the Hudson River. And it'll be about an hour. There's no admission, but you do need to wear a mask. And we'll have masks in case you don't have one. And the whole point of this is that the Hudson River School of Photographers from the 1800s is very akin to what we do in photography and how they handle light, how shapes, sizes, people, perspectives. And we're going to walk around and take 4, 5, 6 different paintings, and we're going to draw an analogy of how that relates to us in photography. I know a lot of times folks will say, I go into an art gallery and I can't see how this would relate to photography. But this is one where you're going to be able to actually learn something from the paintings and see how they crafted an image. So that should be a lot of fun. It's an hour, and that'll be on Sunday at 11 o'clock. Monday, we normally have a meeting Monday evenings, but we're not going to have one next Monday evening because it's Columbus Day. So to fill that time, not really to fill it, to diminish what I'm going to say, is Karen Cummings has been doing a Goodnight Harrisburg series of night street photography. And she is going to lead us in Harrisburg starting at 7 o'clock, and we're going to walk. We're just going to follow her around like little chickens, and she's going to tell us what we can photograph, and it should be a lot of fun. Her work is absolutely outstanding, and when you get the email, you'll see some of the work that she did in there. And that'll be on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. And we're going to meet right down near the river, what they call Kunkel Park. And that's where the guy who's reading the newspaper, it's a statue, and he's sitting on a bench. And that's where we're going to meet. And we have other things coming up. I'm not going to go through them, but we're going to have an equipment maintenance session coming up beyond a Monday night meeting. We're going to have a scavenger hunt at Fort Hunter. We're going to have an image review with Chip Kane on street photography. E. Smith's going to do a presentation for us on family event photography. And then we're going to have a Boiling Springs photo walk. And those are all coming up here within the next month. So anybody have any questions that we should answer, or any really, really cool things to photograph that we haven't mentioned?
Joe, can I mention one thing? What we're going to be seeing at the art gallery are all paintings by the Hudson River School painters. So what we're going to be looking at are oil paintings.
Oh, good. Thanks. Okay, so we have tonight 11 images, and we're very, very pleased that Lori has come back to us again to be the reviewer. And Lori, before we start tonight, can you just give everybody a little bit of a thumbnail sketch as to who you are in the art world?
I guess it's probably not the best to start out with an Hello, everybody. I would say that my work typically is local and landscapes. I like to capture the essence of place, and I think that by living in a place, you kind of have a familiarity with it and an intimacy with it. And so I feel that that's what I try and convey in a lot of my images is, I don't know, I guess just the ability to be able to see things when the atmospheric conditions change and the light changes, that you kind of know what's happening at certain times. And I just kind of like to follow that and pay attention to it and notice it and document it. I guess that would be one of the better ways to describe a lot of the work that I do. And I mean, I don't limit myself to that. I would say a lot of times for photo submissions to galleries and things, conceptually, I do self-portraitures to convey a theme. And I also do work with macro. I do macro work as well. So there you have it.
You
I
work
don't
in-
really like the talking about myself part of the
You
thing
work in
occasionally.
oil or watercolor or what?
What?
You work in oil or watercolor?
No, photographs. Is that, I'm sorry, is that what you mean? No, I'm a
Yeah.
photographer.
Yeah, so you, do you paintings or just do photography?
I have dabbled in painting.
Have you?
I don't really show a lot of that work, but I have done watercolor classes and I have done watercolor independently. I would probably say that's my favorite medium
Okay,
for painting. So,
very good. Okay, so the show is on for you to bring up the first image and let's have a go at it.
Yeah.
And we're gonna, the way this is gonna work is that you're gonna give the review and then we're gonna ask the artist to comment about where they took the image, why they took the image, and then go from there.
Okay. Okay. So this one's titled Fog and Infrared. So I think the thing that of course jumps out to me the most is kind of the mood and the atmosphere of this image. And of course the vivid red. That in itself kind of creates, I don't know, a dream state. And I appreciate that about the image. The one thing that I would say that I noticed, and I don't know if it's the treatment from doing the infrared, because I've noticed when I've applied different filters, there's a little bit of blotchiness in the sky. And so my eye was drawn to that a little bit, but I do like the overall sense of the image. The one thing that I would say that I was wondering about with this image is cropping. As far as these two trees go, I kind of wanted to see something maybe that would have a little bit of a variation in height. Maybe if this was a bit of a tapered a little bit higher, that it would add a little bit more interest to the overall image. But overall, what I appreciate most about it is just the sense of mood and the fog. And I did do a little bit of a brightening of it just to kind of see what it would look like. And it doesn't really detract from the overall sense of the image. And it does remove a little bit of the spottiness. And the only other thing I want to say, sometimes when you do the filtering, because this went to a magenta color, you can see a little bit of bleed around the trees. And so those are some of the things that I would try to work to maybe change a little bit, but I like the idea of it and the creativity behind it.
Okay, can we have word from the photographer?
Oh, I think I'm unmuted now.
Okay,
Okay, hey, Laurie. This wasn't done with any filters applied to the camera. It was done with a camera that had been retooled for infrared.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
and it gives strange effects when you process it. When you have a bright sun, then your greens will, in many processes, turn out absolutely white. Okay, although you can process it differently and get this kind of magenta color. Now, since this was taken in on a foggy day, I wasn't going to get much white there anyhow. Although, as in most kinds of photography, you can just about change the colors of almost anything. I mean, I could have changed the colors here, but I kind of liked them this way.
Sure.
And the mood is what I was looking for. I can see what you mean about the tree on the left. I was wondering about that myself. I guess I could have highlighted it in Photoshop and maybe done a transformation to lower it. I'm not quite so sure how that would look with the place that was left from which you had lowered it. Now, I never noticed the blotchiness, although sometimes what happens is that little breaks in the clouds, if they're not entirely smooth, will give you that splotchy look. I mean, clouds will do that in the sky, in a blue sky or what have you anyway.
Mhm.
So if I noticed it, it really didn't bother me. But yeah, I appreciate your comments, and the mood is exactly what I was going for. And yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Thanks, George.
You're welcome.
Okay. This is burnished autumn.
We can't see that. We still have the infrared up there.
Uh, just that's my dog. He gets a little excited when he hear Phil.
Oh, I can see it now.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so burnished autumn. So I feel the exposure is well done on this, and the framing. What I really appreciate here, sorry, I hope he gets quiet. He gets a little excited. Is the diagonal following the leaves pretty much from the right to the left, and you can see it where the stem of the leaf is, and it connects back behind this leaf, and it just kind of follows it all the way through the frame. There's a lot of great detail from the veining on the leaves and all just the aging of the leaves. And then they're just like little nuanced things that I appreciated, just seeing these clovers come out and the way this leaf curls and overlaps with the other one. And then I think this green leaf kind of adds just a little extra to the image as well. So, and even the glistening of the rain. So I really appreciated all the detail in this and the textures and the layers of just the different nature, the different natural elements that are introduced in the frame. Let's see. And it just kind of gives you a sense of the connection and the symbiotic, relationship with nature. The only thing I would say, I wouldn't necessarily change it because I do think it has good motion. The only thing I would say is maybe if you want to play with cropping, just to maybe emphasize different aspects like this little connection with the overlapping of the leaves here, or even the colors here. But overall, I think it's a well done image, and I think that it really carries your eye and your vision through the image.
Lori, that's my photograph. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I got into taking leaves by accident one time years ago, and now I can't stop. And anyway, I took that in a rainy day. There was a bunch I took, and I just happened up to find this one day, and I started playing with it. And I like texture, so I was playing with that a lot. And I like greens and golds, and they were in there. So anyway, thank you so much for your comment, because I like to piecemeal them sometimes, and sometimes you have so many choices it drives you crazy.
True.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks, Mary.
Do you see the next image?
Not yet.
Okay, it's called Dance of the Eternal Spring.
Okay. Yeah, we can't see. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Okay. So just immediately upon viewing this image, it just is so dynamic, and it just feels, the title itself pretty much sums up kind of the essence of it, because it just feels like a celebration. It's kind of unbridled and sensual, and it almost feels like a celebration of fertility almost. That's how it feels to me. I didn't know if this was an image that had a lot of layers to it, or I guess when we get to that part, I'd be curious to ask the photographer if it's a layered image. It seems like it is. But it's just kind of really, I love the tonal quality. There's a great tonal range to it. And I just find it fascinating the way this splash of light is, this splash of water is coming down. And it just kind of seems like it's bringing the sculpture to life. It gives it a lot of movement. I'd be curious to see this sculpture in real life to see if it has the same feel about it, or if it's just really the way that they treated the overall image that brought it to life. So, but again, the tonal quality, it just carries a wide range of grays, and there's a great highlights and shadows, and it just has a lot of energy to it for something that's an inanimate object. So the one thing that I did to change it possibly is just to kind of bump the contrast a little bit. And so it just kind of made the shadows, it kind of created even more intensity. It kind of brought out a lot of the sense of the rain, and you could see that even more. And then the highlights became even more highlighted. And it wasn't necessarily better, but it was just interesting to see it that way as well. So just in case you're curious, I sometimes envision the image and then I kind of play with it myself just to see if I'm kind of, my thoughts on it, if I are kind of going in the right direction. But again, with this image, I think that it kind of conveys the intent of the photographer. So, but I won't know until I talk to them. So.
And who is the photographer, please?
Hi, it's Elaine Shook. Thanks, Lori, for your comments. And I'm actually a little bit afraid to talk about this one after Mike's comment about photographing other people's art. But this is a highly photographed statue at Italian Lake, and I took this on our last trip there a few weeks ago. But I was looking for a whole different perspective and a different feel. This is very highly photographed and published on the internet. All you have to do is Google it and come up with about 150 photos on the first page. In looking at this statue in real life, it isn't all that impressive. Number one, it's in the middle of the lake, so you can't get real close to it. And the color tones are, it's bronze, weathered bronze, and it's extremely warm, too warm for my taste. So I thought that converting this to black and white and adding contrast, and by the way, I did initially have more contrast, but I thought it might be a little bit too dark, so I eased up on that a bit. It is not layered, it's a single image, and I simply converted it to black and white and played with the tonal values, especially in the greens, to lighten those up to give it that kind of a whitish look, the appearance behind it, to provide some more contrast. But I loved the theme of this statue. I love what it represented, especially knowing the history behind it. Which is kind of a lengthy story about how it was sold to Milton Hershey, and he declined it because he thought it was too risque. And the sculptor, whose name is Giuseppe Dionato, had to sue him to get paid for it. And then Hershey later donated it to the city because he didn't want it on his property. But anyway, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. All I have to say.
Elaine, I have a question for you. How did you get that background to be so obscured? Because in real life, it was very vibrant, that background with the trees and stuff.
Right. Well, it wasn't obscure when it was still in the color version. And that's why playing with the tonal values helped that a lot, because it really brightened up that green pine tree, which is on the right of the statue. I did soften it up a bit, I believe. I can't remember if I applied a Gaussian blur, or I may have even applied a light important effect to it to smooth out some of that detail a bit and create more of a glow. Take the eye away from the detail in the background.
Very good. Anybody have a question for Elaine? Very good. Can move on to the next one.
You see it? It says, look, no hands.
Now, it takes, there's a little bit of a delay there. Now we can see it. There we go.
Okay. So, on this particular one, I thought there was a good division of the frame in order to get the subject of the roller coaster kind of centered, but then also the way the roller coaster is curving and bending, it kind of draws your eye through the frame. I will say, to me, a little bit, because the roller coaster is so architectural and structural, the bushes itself, I kind of almost didn't want to see them there. And I thought maybe a little bit of a cropping, and it kind of created an S. I think it was maybe about this area, and it kind of created an S motion through the frame. Because again, I really appreciate all the curves and structure, but then I feel like this keeps drawing my eye down here, and I want to look up here. So I also felt like the image, when I think of an amusement park, I think of it's just very like sensory overload with noises and sights, and everything's very vivid and colorful. And so bumping this contrast up a little, making it a little bit brighter and bumping the contrast kind of really made you hone in on all the details in the frame of the roller coaster. And it just brought out all the vividness of the color, which again, to me, creates the essence of an amusement park kind of atmosphere. And just cropping it in through here, it just really created even more motion. So, and that's just, again, personal preference. Obviously these trees are here and there's not much you can do about that. So I don't know if you could kind of shift in order to maybe get different sections of the roller coaster, but that was kind of my overall impression on this one.
Who's the artist?
That was mine, Lori, Trey. I shot that from up at the Rose Gardens
Okay.
down to the roller coaster, and
Okay.
it was with a 500mm lens. I don't have it anymore. I wish I did. I did think about cropping it more, and you're right. I should have. I would have been nice if I would have left the coaster go a little bit further, and then I could have cropped more of it. But I was afraid to crop it too close. I don't know. I see what you're saying. I just didn't know how to crop it. Thank you. I'll have to work on it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, this one's called Away from the, it says matting crowd, but I'm guessing maybe it's maddening.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
It's
so
on the
this one,
screen.
obviously, everybody, I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I just said it's on the screen now.
Oh, okay. So this one, of course, with the Spanish moss, it creates, that dreamy, enchanted feel, it just leads your eye through the frame with the pathway here, and then this big overreaching branch. And the division of the frame, again, is just well done. And what I appreciated too is just the highlights in through here. And just the overall sense that it evokes, you just kind of feel like you're in an enchanted land. Now on this, it doesn't feel as dark and different on different screens. It was a little denser up here. And then so it felt like a very division of like it being brighter down here and then darker up here. So in brightening the Spanish moss, you kind of felt more of their wispiness. and kind of gave it more of that, I don't know, ghostly kind of feel that the Spanish moss kind of gives. And it also allowed for a little bit of the detail even in the tree as it's crawling up the trunk to be seen a little bit. So just brightening well, dodging it in through here and maybe a little bit in some of the other areas, and then lightening it overall gave it more of a painterly kind of feel. But then when you lightened it and then just did a little bit of contrast, what I noticed is it kind of more evenly darkened the image, but allowed for the highlights to really pop. And even this pathway almost kind of just was like really highlighted, you know, to lead you back to where the subjects are back here. But overall, it just has a really good feel with the curve of the trees. And yeah, I want to be there pretty much. The only other thing I did too is I cropped it, and I kind of maybe right around this area cropped it. And so what it did is it made the trees even larger and more looming. And also it kind of moved this pathway over just a little bit in the frame. So it probably came in to the image around here. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that's better, but it just moved it slightly over. So it felt like you were maybe traveling a little bit more into the image, and you were almost directly in front of that pathway. And again, the trees felt like they were kind of larger and looming overhead. And it also makes for a very nice black and white image as well. So.
Thank you, Lori. This is Joe Farrell, and that's my image. It was taken down in Central Florida at a place called the Circle B Bar Ranch. And I was there for 3 days doing bird photography. And and I had to walk through this particular coast of trees to get to where I was going, and I just fell in love with it. I really appreciate your comments about the dark branch that overhangs the whole thing, about lightening that a little bit and bringing out some detail. That's very interesting. I didn't think of that, and I'm going to try that. And I think too, your comment about cropping it, and then that brings the trees more dominant because they're larger. And you might say to yourself, now I will say to myself, do I need that much leading line into it on the bottom of the image with that grass? And so I'm going to actually try that this evening after the meeting's over, and I'm going to work on that.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. I appreciate that.
Joe, if I may, I like Lori's comment. We are accustomed as photographers to starting an image in a corner and taking it out. And usually that is what I like. But by broadening that bottom, the way she was talking about bringing the crop line up and inviting the person to walk the path, to follow the path, I think that was a very good comment. Thank you, Lori.
Oh, sure.
Okay, thanks. We can see the window to another
Okay.
world.
Okay. So I thought this was an interesting choice in the way of centering the window frame and using the negative space. It kind of suggests, you know, the same space almost as the window size. And I like the starkness of the white with the black. The only thing that I would say about that is when you do this, I think you have to be really careful. And I have a problem with this as well with window frames, because even though you feel like you're flush on, when you go to work around the frame, it's not, there's like little areas, like you can see this here. And then here, especially my eye was drawn to the fact that it's a little narrower on this side as opposed to this side. And it may seem like nitpicking, but I think when you have such a strong contrasting image, that it's something that really draws the viewer's eye and you kind of notice it. So you almost feel like it needs to be spot on. but I like, all the reflection that's going on in the windows, and I like seeing through to the other side, and to see a window within the windows, and the repetition of that. Let's see. And it kind of feels almost like well, never mind, I'll skip that part. The only other thing too is I thought, once this area is fixed, I thought it would even be good to see it just a little brighter and with a little more contrast, and really just accentuate the blackness against the white of the window. And it just really like popped even more. But again, if you're going to do that, I just feel like this has to be pretty much spot on, because otherwise it's a little bit of a distraction. So.
Can we hear from the artist? Is the artist here? Rick, can you tell us who the artist was on that image?
Yeah, this is Rod Frazier.
Okay. And Rod is not with us tonight. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lori.
Okay, sure. Okay.
And we can see that image well, military brat.
I have to ask. I don't, whenever the person talks, I don't know if it's because it's a dandelion weed or because it's like also out of focus, if it's like a combination of all of that. But so anyway, I really appreciated the movement of this image. And I like the way the stem leads into it. And just the overall movement of it, because I feel like it kind of gives the sense of the spirit, like the life force behind nature. With that, you feel like it's kind of a breathing, living thing. And so that movement creates that sense to me. One thing that I found when I was looking at this is when you dodge around here and maybe dodge a little bit of the background, you can see more of the movement. I'm assuming this is grasses that are moving. And then it also creates more movement within the flower. It gives it kind of a rotational feel. But I like the vividness of the colors, and it, it's from a tonal range. I feel like with the abstract nature of it, it's probably hard to necessarily, I just think it's meant to be vivid and kind of judged on a different level. But again, just a little bit of lightness around here, and you can bring out almost more. You can see that there's like layers almost. And you can even see more of that layering from the movement, and it just creates even more more of a dynamic movement. So in the image itself. But I want to know about the title too.
Who's the artist?
All right, it's Ron Stefacek. This was an image that I was out in the front yard and there was a dandelion there, and I was practicing with some intentional camera movement. And the way the title came about was a couple of days before the submission here, a friend of mine messaged me and says, "Do you have any dandelion photos?" I says, "You know what? I haven't seen a dandelion all spring." And then I was going through some of my images, and lo and behold, I found this. And I figured I'd throw this out there, throw it up against the wall and see what I got, So I appreciate your comments. You didn't, right now I'm actually looking at it. I cropped it to a square just to see what that would look like. And because I do like the colors on it. But it might have to get thrown to the back of the collection. So thanks for your comments.
Sure.
Rod, can I ask you a question? What did you do for the camera movement to get that effect?
It was just handheld, and however I moved the camera at that particular moment.
Okay.
No, it was not it kind of looks like almost a zoom effect, but that is not the case.
Okay. So you use a slow shutter speed for that too.
Yeah, it was a very slow shutter speed, and I moved it around a little bit, very, very slightly, but it was actually the first frame in the series. So just practicing, actually.
Right, thank you.
So thanks. Oh, by the way, military brat is the dandelion. From what she told me, the dandelion is the flower of military brats.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a much simpler explanation.
And that's where the title came from.
Okay.
And we can see that just fine, Lori.
Okay. So called Spreading the Wealth. So I just really appreciated the, I mean, it's a division of frame, but I really appreciated the depth of field on this one because I just think that it lent to the overall softness of the image. It just right away when I looked at it, quiet repose just came to mind. And it almost feels like an early morning discovery as you're walking around and everything around you is really silent, just with its delicateness and its softness. It feels like a whisper. And I appreciate the tonal ranges and just the way that these tiny little I don't know, they're probably weeds, but the little delicate yellow flowers are highlighted. They almost seem like they're twinkling. But and they're really sharp and in detail, and it just helps to frame the image. The only thing that I did think is the way this little pod goes out, so here this kind of neatly frames it in, where this little pod, and then there's also this space, it kind of directs your eye like off of the image a little bit. But I can understand wanting to keep this in. However, if you crop it right along here, you can see where these little weeds kind of mimic what's happening in here, and it kind of creates a nice little framing of the overall subject. Again, it's not a deal breaker to me, but it's just something to consider. But I really think all of it just really lent well to making you look directly at those seeds. And I did lighten it around here a little bit just to see what would happen. I mean, I lightened the overall image, and it's not a make it or break it kind of thing, because I do feel again that it kind of gives the early morning find feel about it. But when you lighten it, you can just see a little bit more of the softness and a little bit more of the wisps and the ghosting that comes from it. But overall, I think it's a lovely image.
Okay, thanks. And who's the artist?
Thanks, Lori. This is Mike Donovan.
Hi, Mike.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to hear you talk about the background because that's really why I submitted it. So I see a spot right now that I'm going to deal with, but I worked like a dog on that background, changed the tones and the focus and this and that. And what I wanted was for it to look far, far away, but still be part of the image. So thanks a lot for mentioning the background. And I think it's something I can stick with, except for one spot that I see right now.
So that wasn't out of camera, like you didn't, I mean, is that your depth of field though that you had?
Yes.
Okay, but you're talking more like
the depth of field is what I had. It was the tones and the brownish feel that I wanted to do to pick up the seeds a little bit.
Okay.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, was there direct sunlight on that?
No, actually not. What I did was, well, there was after I applied the sunlight filter.
Okay.
In Affinity, they have actual like beams that you can use, but I didn't do that. But I did apply one that put like a lighter sun tone in the top right.
Okay. That's very nice. Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, we can see the mohawk and dark sunglasses.
So I appreciated the playful title, and it helped me to kind of view this in a different way. Obviously, the symmetry is obviously the thing that stands out the most to me about the image, and just I love, and the colors are really nice too. But so going along with the mohawk and dark sunglasses, one thing that I felt was a little bit of a distraction in the image was just a few of these little things down here. And so I just would recommend, if you're gonna just really work on the theme and play with that theme and idea, is to kind of crop that out and get rid of those things down there and really just focus on the sunglasses and mohawk. And then also I found that it's tricky because sometimes I look at an image in one screen and it looks a certain way, and then in another one. So in here, I feel like I see a little bit more of the color and the lightness of the architecture of the building. But also, if you let me see here, what did I do? If you brighten it a little bit and then add the contrast, what it does is it even gives kind of a little bit of a glowing effect to the overall building. And when I think of like sunglasses, I always think of, well, these particular sunglasses would seem almost like the reflective kind. So it really brought out a lot of reflection, and it also reflected the clouds, and the clouds became a little bit more active and angry. So again, just kind of playing with the theme and giving it that sense, to me, just kind of, I guess, solidified the overall idea.
Okay, can we hear from the artist?
That's me, Jim Berlinger. Lori, I knew you were going to suggest I crop the stuff out of the bottom, clone it out.
Okay, you agree?
But I'm not real savvy with those programs yet.
Okay.
Probably would have been titled Axe Murder if I tried it. So I left it in, knowing full well I'd get that feedback. This was down in Stamford, Connecticut. My wife and I were walking around before a family wedding. Mike Lackey a few weeks ago had an excellent symmetrical picture that was reviewed. And I was so impressed with it, I accepted the challenge to try to do some symmetrical work. And this building was so unique. So here's my opportunity to see what I can do. So appreciate the feedback. Recognize what I was trying to do. It was an angry looking day out. So I chose to keep the building dark like that, just to give it overall sense of ominous to the weather. We were all kind of on edge about the wedding anyways due to the weather. So that kind of fit the theme of the day. But yeah, I could see how, a different look might give it glowing and stand out a little bit more. So I may play with it and go with a V2 on it and see what I think. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, we can see infinite grandeur.
Okay, so this, again, this was a nice division of the frame and the leading river, going back to what the focal point is of the waterfall. When I was looking at this, though, again, on a different screen, it had more of a bluish cast to it. It doesn't quite so much on this. So you can see all the details of the trees and the shadow. What I did is I added a little bit of yellow to separate the trees from the sand a little bit more. But in this, it doesn't feel like you have to do that as much because I can see a lot of shadow. It was a little more flat on my other screen. The one thing, though, that I will say is for the waterfall, I felt like it was maybe just a smidge high key. And so dodging this in a little bit more brought out some of the details of the waterfall. And then it also created a little separation from the mist and kind of highlighted that as well. But overall, it's a great leading image. And then there's just so much detail in all of the, with the forest and all the crags and the rocks and the trees and the shadows. So the division of the frame along the waterfall lines As you can see, it kind of creates that, rule of thirds, if you will.
Okay, can we hear from the artist?
That's me, Claire. The composition is pretty easy because where you stand, you pretty much get it if you use the right lens. I will try dodging the waterfall. I can see where that would add a little bit more detail.
I'm sorry, did I say dodge? I meant to say burn.
I think you meant burn.
Yeah, I did mean burn. I'm sorry about that.
I actually submitted it just to see what your comments would be on some of the post-processing that I did.
And what?
And thank you for your comments very much.
You're welcome.
Claire, while you're up, did you do much post-processing on it? Was it heavily processed or?
Not heavily. I did take 2 or 3 shots just to make sure that the foreground was in focus. I did a little bit of work on the stream itself, a little bit of dodging and burning, and I brought up some of the orange colors to bring in a little bit more richness.
Okay. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Okay, so late autumn, early. So for this one, I liked the use of the negative space. The only thing that I would say is this little yellow mark. Whoop, sorry about that. Is there something? Oh, this little yellow mark here was distracting to my eye, so I feel like that should probably be something that's removed. I will say that it felt a little bottom heavy to me, and I don't know if it's just because like this line of the stem seems to be just a little bit too straight, and then it seems to hang a little heavy at the base. So adding a little bit more border around it would create more of a floating sense to the image, and also maybe even creating more of a diagonal with the positioning of the leaf. And I also rotated it 90 degrees counterclockwise, and it really created a ton of movement. Like it just, I guess I can't probably do that. You can't probably do that to demonstrate it, but whoever the photographer is, you could do that after the fact and see. But I like the treatment of the leaf, and I feel like it really gives it a sense of its age, and you can almost hear and see it, you can hear it crisp, the crispiness of it, and you can kind of, it almost looks like it's burnt because there's so much, I don't know, the blackness and the way that it's right here, the way that this whole, just some things about it just kind of give it a little bit of a feel like it could be burnt. And so when you upend it and you turn it 90 degrees and make it a vertical image, what's interesting is these shadows almost feel like smoke coming off of the leaf. So I thought that that was like kind of interesting, an interesting overall effect. And I like just the details with the curling. And the only other thing I would say is in the white, though, I'm not sure what the treatment was done on this, if it's because it was darkened or because it was saturated a little bit, but there is a little bit of distortion over here or density. I'm sorry about that. No, it probably didn't even shift enough on yours. But anyway, just a little bit here. There's a little bit of just some digital residue, I guess you would say, and then just again some density here. So I don't know if I would dodge that out a little bit to get rid of some of that. But overall, I would just play with the positioning of the leaf, or even how you want the leaf to be viewed. But I think it really gives like a sense of just this wilted, weathered, almost like it's ash and it would just crumble in your hand. So.
Lori, before we hear from the artist, I want to ask clarification what you said. Are you thinking that you would expand the canvas on both sides, on the top and the bottom, so you have a lot more white space, and then you would have rotated the leaf? Is that what you're saying?
No, well, so if you want to keep this position, I would expand the canvas and it would just give it more of a sense of floating instead of feeling so bottom heavy.
Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like it kind of is abrupt and this line across here just kind of feels bottom heavy. But if you expand the canvas, it has more of a sense of floating. And you could probably just do it a little bit more on the top and a little bit, maybe a little bit more on the bottom. But I also did it on the sides as well, just to kind of see what that would look like. And then the other option, even if you just take it the way that it is right now without adding anything on the canvas, and just flip it 90 degrees counterclockwise, it just really creates like a completely different, it just creates a different dynamic to the image.
And who's the artist?
Yeah, this is Dave Marchetto. Thanks very much, Lori. I really appreciate your thoughts on that. I absolutely take the fifth on that yellow mark. I don't know where that came from, but I will fess up to that rainbow tinge in the upper left corner, and I did try to address that. And, you know, I thought it was pretty much gone. You know, with this particular rendition, I'm just guessing maybe that yellow came as part and parcel with the, you know, with the corner. But I can assure you that yellow wasn't there, given, you know, my scrutiny of this. You know, I set up the camera for a real close-up, and I decided to put a very small leaf in the you know, in the plane, so to speak. So I really was taken with the blue purple, the sheen of the leaf, and it was just very interesting to me, you know, the dried up aspect of it and so forth. I did try rotating it. When I did that, it just made the details smaller, and I didn't want to give up the real closeness of that. And I thought maybe of just, you know, leaving the stem out, maybe all together and really getting in, but that didn't work. So yeah, I was torn. My concern, and I'm glad you kind of addressed it, was the all white background. It didn't give me a chance to work with the shadows very much. That fringing on the upper left, and you know, it's also on the upper right, by the way. So yeah, I was aware of that, and that, you know, that was troubling. But overall, it was fun. It was kind of like an experiment of sorts, and I really, you know, it is fragile. You know, it's when I picked it up, I think it fell apart. It's as fragile as it looks, and I really do appreciate those thoughts. I think I probably boosted some of the sliders too much, and you know, and got myself in trouble with that color, including that rogue yellow bit there, which I can't approve of either.
Sorry about that.
All I could say is I don't know where it came from, and that's my story, and I'm sticking.
I promise
with
I didn't add it.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Lori, that's our 11 images. Thank you. I have a question for you. Throughout the evening,
Sure.
You've talked a lot about dodging and burning. Is that something that's in your tool bag that you use quite often, or do you use that sparingly?
Well, I'm kind of old school. So I studied in a dark room. So I do a lot of dodging and burning. I did a lot of dodging and burning now, but before, but I also do go into raw, and I do adjust shadows and highlights sometimes through raw as well. It just depends on what, I just think sometimes it's nice to subtly accent little, you know, highlight areas. And then also when there's areas that are kind of dense, it just can make a difference. I apologize for my dog. He likes the bark. So anyway, I use both. So if I feel like an image needs more balance or tonal range, you know, I just work with it.
And I believe you mentioned it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Orton effect. Did you use that word tonight or not?
What effect?
The Orton effect, the softening, the glamour glow.
Well, I think someone might have mentioned it for the image of the waterfall or the sculpture with the waterfall. I think she mentioned it when she said about turning it to black and white and
Right.
using the Orton effect, which I didn't know what that was. So I didn't comment on that, but
Okay.
yeah.
I
So,
did talk about
and I
that,
work a
Bill.
lot with Sunrise. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Elaine.
Just confirming that I did talk about that.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Well, any other questions or comments for Lori before we end the program tonight?
No, but thank you very much, Lori.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you so much, Lori. We really appreciate it. That was
Thank
a
you.
real good review.
Lori,
You're
Lori,
welcome.
Lori,
Yeah.
next time you should put your dog on as well.
On his what?
We're all wondering what the dog looks like.
Aw,
Can you put him
he's
on?
this crazy shaggy looking thing. He kind of looks like a wolfhound. He's also become my new subject. So
Okay. Again, Lori, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was very well done tonight. Appreciate that.
oh, you're welcome. I appreciate everybody's work and it challenges me to think outside my box. So
That's great. Okay, everybody, thank you much. And this will be the end of the program tonight. We will be meeting on Wednesday at the Adam Ritchie Park at 4, and then on Sunday at the Lebanon Valley College Susanna Arnold Art Gallery. So thank you much and see you at one of our field trips.
Thanks. Good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks, Lori.
welcome. Night.
Bye, Lori.
Bye.
Okay.
Joe, I found a video for you.
Uh-oh, okay, good.
Okay.
All right.
Look at 122 Kodak 3A.
122 Kodak 3A.
3A. And the guy's name is Michael Carter.
Michael Carter.
No,
Okay.
Lori, I was not looking it up while you were doing your talk. There's a lot of videos actually, so you'll be good to go.
Okay. I just got to figure out how to get the thing open without wrecking it. So I'm sure my WD-40 or that kind of stuff will work in there, but I don't want to wreck it.
It's showing a little button separate from the lever.
Okay. Mike, let me just stop the recording at this point. There. Okay. Stop.